Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family, and welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation BINAH, CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York, giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High, King of the universe, for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, giving glory, honor, respect to the Supreme for all of us, for everything, and waking us up this morning, allowing us to be here today. I pray that the Creator will continue to bless each and every one of us, giving due respect to the leadership of our congregation, even my brother, Chief Prince Yehudah ben Yisrael, praying that the Most High God be with him, his family, his household, Most High God bless and keep him. Also that the Most High God be with one of our elders, even Chief Kohat ben Levi, praying that the Most High God will be with him, his wife, his household, his children, shield, guide, and protect them both. Giving all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High once again, and thanking y'all for tuning in. Early Shabbat Shalom to all of you, and praying that the Most High God cause you to have a prosperous week, and that He has bestowed the blessings of heaven upon all of you who are listening today. So at this time, we're going to move straight ahead, and we're going to go over the portion of Re'et. And for that, I'll pass it on to one of my teachers and one of my mentors, even Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Okay, Baruch Hashem. And first of all, I give praise to the Prematon Universe, God, my forefathers, God, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to respect to the platform on the D.C.B channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Yehudah ben Yisrael, to the host, Chief Uziel. Also do respect to the Prince, Chiefs, the Rabbinate, Kohanim, Maureen, brothers and sisters, visitors to channels. I greet you all in the tongue of my forefathers. Shalom Aleichem and early Shabbat Shalom. And I'd like to start off with Adonai, Septai, Jitakufi, Agiti, Ateaka. Allah on my lips and my mouth to declare the praise. I'll be touching on the portion of Re'eh, but before I do that, I'd like to also thank all those, that sent out their condolences, and that's greatly appreciated for all those that, send their condolences out. Condolences, supports a person, a lot greater than they lost, in the individual. And that's one of the things that, you can never understand a loss of a person to one person. But when you send your condolences, you say, in a sense, I'm there for you. So that's one of the great things. And that's more of a touching thing, for knowing that people would have their condolences go out. So I appreciate all those that, that send their condolences. And moving on from there, I'd like to also answer, I think it was 2 questions, if I recall. One, a simple answer that you could, and then the other one's a little bit difficult. The first one I like to deal with is what was asked about the symbolism of the pomegranates on the priest, the high priest's garment, on the ma'il itself at the bottom, and it's symbolism. The thing about symbolism, you don't have no one area where you could, you stop. You can always, making a metaphor or an allegory in reference to a symbolism. But one of the symbolisms that I used was that a pomegranate itself the skin is kind of tough on the outside, and you got to get through the skin, and then the actual pit itself is really thick and rough. You got to get through the pit in order to get to that delicious seeds of fruit that's within it. And that's the way Israel is itself. Sometimes, we might look rough on the outside, and then, say, well, below the, rough exterior, and you say, okay, what he's like. And you can't see exactly what he's like. So you got to look deeper into a person. So a lot of times we read people just from the exterior and not look for the interior, the very essence of a godly spark within it. That's when I said about the yin and the yang, that you have that particular spark within the individual. Now to get to the second question, which is, we have this term anthropomorphism, which is men trying to use human terms to describe God. And I said that God made man, but ever since man was made, we've been making God and try to understand God from our position, from our standpoint. So anything we think about God, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, feet, and all that, we consider that from our perspective, what we have to operate on. And since we think, we believe our thoughts should be just like God's thoughts, and not that we're supposed to follow God's decree, which is a difference. And when they talk about written with the finger of God on the tablets, that's very very powerful. Now, God is not a being that we could say is physical, because when it's physical, it's contained. He had delivered some physical, tangible things for us to contain, and the master. So when Moses went up there in the mount, after he carved out the second set of tablets, the first time we know he went up there empty-handed and came back with something. All right. The last time, which was the third time, when he went up with the second set of tablets, that he went up for the 40 days and 40 nights. That you if you don't believe the word of Moses, you could say you might have did some sculpture work, did some calligraphy, because we seen you take them up there blank. So hence, not only was it necessary for Moses to make the statement, but when he came down the third time, his face shone. It never shone the first time, never shone the second time. Only when he came down with the second set of tablets did he had that glow on him. Then they know he really met God this trip around. And that's after all our sins that we had committed and stuff. So we have a testimony, and like I mentioned before, that the broken tablets, traditionally they say he kept that, and I accept that. I told you I may mention that I accept that viewpoint as well, because anything that would come from on high that's unique, no matter how fragmented it is, it's worth something. And I think I may mention about the Dead Sea Scrolls that keep us important. Old coins with that's meant as X amount of years, they keep us important. Those are trivial and things in that area there. But when you talk about something that Moses had coming from the Creator that he didn't have at first and broke up, then that would be surely a keepsake. And then we get a little bit of a hint when I read the last portion of Aquarius, that he actually came back, and was told to put all that in the ark itself. So that's one of the things that the finger. I don't know how God did it. Moses described it as that, and letting you know that it didn't take any effort from the Creator to do that. When he spoke the world into being, then putting a finger there means that it's much more dear to him. It's almost like saying, I put my stamp or seal on this here when you touch something. During slavery, a lot of slaves couldn't even write. And so they said, just give me, put your mark, or either put your hand here. So here it is that we have the only thing in any kind of history that the Creator actually had written down. And then we have a comparison mode, which I mentioned before, that you see the broken fragments, you see the new tablets that Moses brought, and also it told you then what was written on those tablets is what you heard before you had any tablets at Mount Sinai, when those 3.5 million people stood at the foot of Mount Sinai and God spoke with them. So the exact same things you heard is the exact same thing that was written down on those tablets. And so that's like solidifying it. We know it's been a tradition in some places that they would write on the document, like you would find in Jeremiah, and then when they would put it in the jar, that they'll write on the outside what the contract is, and then they have another contract written in case over that, and being that. So the one case would be outside that's written with the same stuff. The other one's a case within that one, and then that's put within the jar. So that you had to go through 3 different layers to basically get to the contract. And if you doubt what you see out here, you could break that further and see if the final piece is supportive of that. So those is some of the things that you think about. Like one of the things I used to use as an analogy before I get into this particular portion is that the very ark itself is actually Bezalel built it 3 times. Because first is wood, then it had to be inlaid with gold. So that means you had to build that the part to go inside the ark out of pure gold. And then you had to also have the outside made of pure gold to cover it from the outside completely. So the inside is completely around, filled up with gold, walls and stuff. So he actually technically built the ark 3 times, 2 times with gold, one for the inside, one for the outside, and then the shittim wood, the acacia wood, some people refer to as the ark was. So it was overlaid and inlaid with gold. So those are some things I'd like to share with you at this particular time. So now we get into another portion of Re'eh, and when we deal with the word Re'eh means from the word to see, Roe, which is to see, and this is unique because normally, we are told to hear, O Israel, to listen, and then some people learn by listening, and other people learn by seeing. Now, sometimes you could perceive a lot more in depth by hearing, from tonations, underlying, things that's involved there. But seeing is another level. Some people had to just see certain things. Some people may not trust their eyes, but nevertheless, Moses using all these faculties and saying that you don't believe what God said. It's not just enough to hear what God said at Mount Sinai. It's not just enough to hear what I'm telling you now at this particular time. Now, I need you to be able to see certain things, see in depth about certain things, because sometimes we look, but we really don't see in certain areas. So, and it's almost, I'm gonna use a quick analogy and then I'll move on. Like when you play a game of checkers or chess, and I like to say chess more, but either one. And a guy, make a move, and you make a move. You're looking at the board. They're looking at the board, and then a guy make a particular move, and you say, "Wow, I didn't see that move coming," because you're looking sometimes, but you may not be perceiving or seeing to the great depth. So sometimes, that's why we say sometimes you've been looking, but did you see? So now Moses using all these different areas here to teach the children of Israel when they get ready to go into the land, because he's not going to be there, and it's going to be a lot easier for them to go astray, not being completely centered around the Mishkan, and also be involved in their daily occupation. So it opens up like this here. In the 26th verse, and it starts from the 11th chapter, 26th verse, and it goes all the way to the 16th chapter, the 17th verse. So that's the, and it covers a lot. I'm just going to read some of the things it covers, because I know I'm not going to cover all of it. First start off with blessing and curses, and then it goes into about two particular mountains, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. Then it goes into the monuments of idolatry to be destroyed. Then it goes to the place of God's service, the laws of eating flesh, and warnings against adultery and human sacrifice, entices to adultery, and relatives who entice to adultery, adulterous cities to be destroyed. God's people must not disfigure themselves, and we're going to that a little bit. What beasts may or may not be eaten, clean and unclean fish, clean and unclean fowl, which is dietary law, and nothing that dies of itself may be eaten. Tithes of divine service, tithes of alms and charity, the seventh year of release for the poor, lending and giving, freedom of Hebrew servants, firstlings of cattle sanctified, and the Shalosh Regalim, the three pilgrimage times they talk about. So that's a lot. So since just me going over what this particular Sitra Re'eh deals with, a lot of these laws we heard before, but now we have some little nuances that's being depicted within them that I would try my best to how to point out, and as I'm skipping through some of this stuff. But it's a lot. So anybody that's really want to be very studious, and when it comes down to not scripture, then I always ask you to read over the whole portion. Take your time and read the whole portion, and then you discuss it with your, your teachers, your colleagues, your family. Because in discussion, you'll get better. It's when you read for yourself only and don't try to share what you read or discuss what you read and look for other thoughts on what you read, you never really get that great in your understanding. Your wisdom will want to increase that great in your understanding. So the best way to do is read it and discuss it and have people share their thoughts. Their thoughts may align with you, or they may not align with yours, but yet you have another viewpoint. It may not change your view, but you have another viewpoint that you was able to actively engage in. And that's what's great about Torah. Most of my weeks I'm always every day discussing different topics in Tanakh, and not that that's all I do. Even though I'm somewhat retired, it's not all I do. I enjoy myself. On other activities, and try to maintain some kind of physical exercise as well. But the thing is that I'm constantly somewhere within the day, more often than not. I'll never go a day without discussing something in the book. And that's what we all should try to do, because we have a mankind, period. When I say mankind, I mean male and female, have this thirst to know. And not only to know, be satisfied that they know what they know to be correct, true. So this is that's why I tell people that they should pursue that. So now getting moving on with this here, the 26th verse of the 11th chapter of Deuteronomy, according to the Masoretic text. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. The blessing, if you hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, and a curse, if you shall if ye shall not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day to go after other gods which ye have not known. So I want to take a look at that verse just a little bit in the Hebrew. It's a lot of commentaries in reference to that, and a lot of discussion. But I use the word, re'eh anochi. Now, let's say I in Hebrew, we just say I. Ani, excuse me. You just say Ani. You just say Ani, which is I. Now, when you use Anoki, that's almost like the commandments itself, starting off, Anoki. And that's a term that when grammatically you could dissect into, I am, I'm thus, it's all about me. I'm the one. So this is, something that we got to look at a little deeper. And why Moses would use that particular term, Anoki. And it's more biblically used. It's never really used in modern Hebrew today speaking. But it says, and then it says, that he said, but, the set, when you set something down, do I take it or not? So the word is notain. I'm giving. This is something I'm giving you. And so this, it brings another light to it. So, re'eh anoki notain, litnechem hayon baraka u'v'kolala, So, and it talks about first a blessing and then a curse. So it's in that order. First a blessing and a curse. And when you think about that, it makes me reflect back into the garden that the Creator had planted, and it uses the term for this particular one tree, not the tree, that's kind of the tree of life, but we're talking about the other tree that they was forbidden to deal with. And when they talk about the other tree, they use the word S. This is S, told. All right. So it's a, S kind told, S kind, told, excuse me, S told, and where ra. So when they talk about a tree of good and a tree of evil, it mentions good first. And you say, okay, all this is bound in that one tree. All this is bound in that one fruit of that tree, because nothing in the garden of the fruit trees. There was no tree in the garden that we read about that didn't produce some kind of fruit. And as those are reflected in Genesis. So when you're using a part of the command at Mount Sinai, Anoki, the first part of the 10 matters that were discussed, when God introduces himself to us as a people. And it also reflects not only a similarity between the tree of knowledge of good and evil, so Esta'at, told where, so Esta'at told where, I just thought about it. I want to make sure I give it out correctly. All right. So when we think about that, the correlation that Moses is making here in the garden story, that it talks about the benefits first, talk about the positive first before it talk about the negative. And this is what he's giving. I'm not giving you negative first. It might prompt you. No, I'm giving you what is good first. But Adam was also told that that very tree has some good qualities, but it has some bad qualities. Don't mess with it. Moses gets set and say, I'm to see, I'm setting for you. And they talk about not only that, but it uses the term hayom, today. You mean or the whole day. Hayom in itself, it means today, it means the day. And sometimes it could be generically used in a sense of a whole, every day, almost every day. And sometimes we just say the whole day. But and let you know that this is something that's supposed to be constant, that the Creator constantly works. And one of the things what we're going to discover in there, just in case I don't cover it, is that we serve a God as we get, as we get into this particular portion, that when He created the heavens and the earth, that He didn't stop operating in the heaven and the earth. It was less recognition of Him in the earth. But what most of us think when God, and that's what a lot of people make this great error, when a lot of atheism don't believe in God because they think the world came into being by itself. And a lot of other people that get into polytheistic worship have other gods because they believe that one God created everything, including the other little bitty gods, and He stepped out and said, I'm done with work. I'm not working anymore. So when that's the concept that some people might have in the area, and when you're saying that the Creator did what He did and then stepped out, you're saying that He's not involved in everyday activity. The trees look and grow naturally. And that's one of the things we're going to discover within this particular portion, just in case I don't get a chance to touch on it. The trees appear to grow naturally. The water, tends to flow naturally. All life, we look around, we adore life. So people look at what they call nature and say nature is really beautiful. They look at the heavens. The sun looked beautiful. The moon looked beautiful. The stars, and they, look beautiful. So they admire those things that's produced, but they doesn't consider the moral standards of those things that they see. A tree look beautiful, but what's the moral standards? The sun look great, but what's the moral standards? The moon look, go through these changes, but what is the moral standard? So when we talk about our law and we talk about actually trying to get close to the Creator, we ain't looking at just what He did. We're looking beyond that into a moral standard. And this we're going to get into a little later on as well. And so when we talk about God, we can't associate with Him alone with just making stuff. We're talking about we upholding the highest moral code of ethics that was ever given to man. And so Moses said, I set this down, but it's actually giving it to you. If you want to take it or not. So that's the actual impression as you get from the Hebrew itself. And then it goes on, and then it tell you what will happen concerning that. And then it goes on to say, and it shall come to pass when the Lord thy God shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt set the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. First, we're about building, not destroying. And we should think about that in our character and everywhere, a facet of life. What can I build? What can I enhance here, as opposed to what can I destroy and eliminate? And that's with every facet of life. So, that and as I mentioned before in the past, the Mount Gerizim that wasn't so much of an attractive mountain. And amongst the Karaite, they look at this as a holy site. Amongst the Karaite and the Samaritans, they look at that as a holy site. And the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, behind the way of the going down of the sun in the land of the Canaanites that dwell in the Arabah, over against Gilgal, besides the terebims of Moreh? For ye are to pass over the Jordan to go and to possess the land which the Lord your God giveth you, and ye shall possess it, and dwell therein, and you shall observe to do all the statutes and the ordinances which I set before you this day. All right. So when we look at all that, this is important to know that. Say, well, we're gonna put the blessings there and the curses there on those particular mountains, but how is it that does it stay there? Does it stay there? And then Moses is, I'm giving you something new. I thought the covenant God made with everybody that was there, which we get into. All right, but that's another thing. So let's just look at some of the things to talk about, and I'm going to try to breeze through it as much as possible. It says, 12th chapter. These are the statutes and ordinances which ye shall observe to do in the land which the Lord, the God of thy fathers, has given thee to possess. Possess it all the days that ye live upon the earth. You shall surely destroy all the places wherein the nations that ye are to dispossess serve their gods, upon the high mountains, upon the hills, and upon every leafy tree. So when we think about some of the things that, dealing with the law, remember the whole thing is about seeing certain things, recognizing certain things. And a lot of times we don't recognize and see a lot of things. And sometimes we'll blind ourselves, or sometimes we're thinking about our own ego, about ourselves. So when we go in here and tell you about certain things you got to observe going into the land, but because the Creator has sworn it to our fathers, and He didn't swear it to us, swore to our forefathers in that sense, and this is what He's doing to keep His end of the contract with them. And it said, you should destroy all the places wherein the nation that you are to possess serve their gods, upon the high mountains, upon the hills, under every leafy tree, and you shall break down their altars and dash in pieces their pillars and burn their asherim with fire, which is the different idols. And you shall hew down the graven images of their gods, and you shall destroy their name out of that place. So any shrine they got when you go into that land. So now I know you got people that man, they used to worship here, they used to worship there. This is only dealing with the land of Israel as we get ready to go in there that particular time. Now, you're gonna have some views. I don't adhere to those views, but you're gonna have some views where people will say that only applied then. Hence, Medina, Yisrael, the state of Israel. You got churches there, you got mosques there, you got Buddhism there, and you got whatever else going on over there, because you got a lot of African people there too. So that land wasn't supposed to have that. One of the radical guys, Mayor Kahani, Shalom, said all that should be destroyed, but the time is not set. But some rabbinic guys would say, under modern Judaism that they use, the viewpoint is that it doesn't matter because we ain't going to switch over to that. We ain't going to join that. That doesn't affect us. It's only when we first enter into the land. So that's something that, you might consider. Now, in America, this is not our land. If you happen to be in China, that's not our land. If you happen to be in Japan, that's not your land. In India, where they got so many stuff going on, that's not your land. It's considering the land of Israel when you go in. Now, you had a guy that used to pray in this particular house. And this particular house that he used to pray in, he had a shrine. Well, you take the shrine out and you keep the house. That was allowable because it talked about, houses built that we built not, that it talks about in the scriptures. So you don't tear down a house and rebuild a house. You just tear out the things that's no good in the house. Even we read earlier, if a house get what they call sara'at, some kind of what people describe as leprosy today. Sometimes they might say a serious mold, but it's uniquely described in the scriptures. And you tear just that piece out. If you could make sure it don't go back, that's it. You don't tear down the whole house. You tear down that piece. You didn't build that house. So, so the Creator don't bring us to a place and say, okay, now you got to build. Now, remember when the tribe of Gad and Reuben, when they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan, now they had to build up stuff because they wasn't supposed to be there. They were supposed to continue across the Jordan. So they forsake the luxury of, I'm going into a house that's already built. I got land that's already got stuff growing on it, already always producing. So it's when I decide to grow my own, make my input in the land that's a difference. But right now, I'm going to a land that's not already barren, no crops or nothing. It's already producing stuff. So I can live off the land. And as we see in the scriptures, Reuben and them decide to stay on that side and work with that. And it says it's good for cattle. They didn't say nothing about farming. They shepherds. So it's good for cattle. But so they want to stay there just for that. So the mentality on just, it's good for cattle. So our heritage fall there. As opposed to, is it good for me? Is it good for mankind? Would it sustain me and my family? It's good for cattle because I can eat. And that's it. And that's my whole existence, is to eat, to live. And, live to eat, rather, just live to eat. My whole existence basically to live to eat. So we got to look at those particular things. So let me just go just a little bit faster. Time moving. All right. So we know it talks about that particular area there. So I want to just move just a little bit, skip down to the 30th. And talk about laws of eating. They're talking about the service of God, and about sacrifices there. And talk about a place, and they talk about a place without naming the place. And the place was ever named in the beginning. It would be a fight over why my tribe didn't get that spot. Why this tribe get that spot? So it's always talk about the place, where God chooses. So in other words, when they go over there, they're going to have one particular place. So that means the blessings and the curses will be set upon those particular mountains. And when you read earlier, you're going to read about the curses, but you don't read about the blessings. So on a particular mountain, Gerizim. So these are some of the things that, when you go to the book, you got to look at and ask questions and discuss. Let me talk about eating in a sense. In the dietary section, it mentions, I'll start from the 15th verse of the 12th chapter. It says, notwithstanding, thou mayest kill and eat flesh within all thy gates, after all the desire of thy soul, according to the blessing of the Lord thy God, which has given thee. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as of the gazelle and as the hart. Only you shall not eat the blood. Thou shalt pour it out upon the earth as water. Now I wanted to speak on that verse. That topic just a little bit. One, when they talk about the clean and unclean may eat, it only mentions clean animals. It don't mean that I could eat some deer, and I could eat some swine and have it on my table together and say I'm gonna eat both of them because it said unclean and unclean I could eat. No, it means a person that might be unclean, because while they was in the wilderness is different. So things changes from the wilderness time to when you get into the land. In the wilderness, they only basically ate meat only when they had to slaughter it at the beginning, at the front of the tabernacle, in order to eat meat. So if they didn't have the quails or anything like that, the cattle itself had to be slaughtered at the Mishkan at that time. So most people didn't eat that much meat over the period of time, because how much slaughtering can you do in one day and bring it back? So they wouldn't. That's why people had so much cattle throughout the years, especially the tribe of Gad and Reuben. And another thing. So that means that you could slaughter something in your own neighborhood, and they say pour the blood to the ground, cover it up. That's what they're telling you to do here in that. And then and so they change this report out to the ground. All right, and then this says, thou mayest not eat within thy gates the tithe of thy corn, of thy wine, or the oil, or the person of thy herd, or the flock, nor any of thy vows which thou vowest, nor the free will offering. So I just want to bring that out, that certain things that you couldn't eat in your gates. You know? When it came down to certain areas of tithes, and it mentions those things there, person of your flock. Now that had to go to the place and be and dealt with at the place where God should choose in the name to dwell, and that's within those 3 times within a year. That stuff is being brought there, and it's dealt with within that period of time. So I just want to move on from there just a little bit. From there, and I'd like to go. Excuse me. I omitted something. I just got to go back 1 minute. I don't want to forget. There was a particular word when just a backtrack. Sometimes that's a problem when they try to skip a lot of stuff. I just want to go back 1 moment, then I'm going to jump back over again where I'm at here. In the beginning, it uses 2 words, the blessing if, and then use the word in the next verse for curse if. Now the word they use for the first if, the word if, is asher. I just want to make sure I didn't overlook that. Let me make sure. Yeah. So the first part of the opening of the sidra, and that's important also to consider, and it's a lot of discussion and debate on that area there. That it uses the word, asher for blessings. You know what I mean? And they talk about a blessing if you hearken unto that, and they use the word im for the word curse. Now, one of the things you might want to discuss with the particular teachers and stuff like that, why asher with the blessing and im for the curse, for the word curse. Now, asher itself also has a connotation of rich, but they both could be used as if, or that, or which. If itself is, in a sense, is just pretty more narrow. And in Genesis, when you go into the book of Genesis, around about the 31st chapter, around 52 verse, and then 43rd and 7, you find the word asher used there in the sense of if, in the simplest term. But that's one thing I meant to speak on earlier. Tend to slip my mind. But you might want to discuss why asher for the blessing and the word im for the curses, and it both is translated, and it both can mean if in a sense. So that's something you might want to discuss later on. So I'm gonna move straight ahead and go back over to about the laws of eating. And one of the things it talks about your tithe and all that got to be eaten in a certain spot. And it goes on to tell you about who's supposed to enjoy it. Thou, that son, that daughter, that manservant, and that maidservant, the Levite that is within thy gates, and thou shalt rejoice before the Lord thy God in all that thou puttest thy hand unto. Take heed to thyself that thou forsake not the Levites as long as thou livest upon the land. Why not forsake the Levite? Because they had pretty much 48 principalities, cities that they're given. So every place where they city at, that particular tribe or family is responsible for supporting those particular Levites there. So if you're a city in Reuben, the Reuben actually supposed to support the Levites. Sometimes it might be a lone Levite. He come in the house, he supposed to support him. A lot of preachers, and back in, not so much now that I know of, but way back when I was a little youngster, a lot of preachers used to just go from house to house to eat. People they always want the pastor or somebody to come to the dinner table and eat, have a meal. So your parents would cook some of the best meals, and all the best stuff was for the pastor. And if he came to your house, that was like a blessing in that sense. Well, we were supposed to take care of Levites similar to that, but there's been a lot of exploitation, a lot of stuff going, but pretty much that used to be at one time what people did. A lot of people in my age bracket or older definitely know that's, the preacher would go here, and by the time you go home, you could take stuff with, take this plate with you, take it home, pastor, so sometimes they would be exploiting the people more so. But and the people be poor, and they be giving the pastor their best, and they will use scriptures like this to exploit people. So let me move on to the 29th verse of this 12th chapter, and it says, "When the Lord thy God shall cut off the nation from before thee, whether thou goest in to dispossess them, thou dispossess them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou be not ensnared to follow them after they are destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, how use these nations to serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters do they burn in the fire to their gods." So some people would figure he dispossessed these people, but they had a point about how they worship. I want to adopt their worship service. Now, sometimes you got to say, okay, when we was told not to add or diminish aught from the Lord. So I'm going to just use a small case and move on for the sake of time. And let's say when we're getting ready to get into the Shul's Regalim, the first one, Passover, eat matzah. So we got to have matzah for that particular period of time during Chag HaMatzah. Some people would just eat matzah all year long. It's okay to eat all year long matzah, as long as you don't say, I'm extending the Passover and I'm doing this here because it's, this is my way of extending the Passover. That's when it becomes a problem. Now, some things we're gonna say they pray to their God. So should I pray to my God? We got a formula that's mentioned in scriptures, but nowhere in the first 5 books, other than the formula to talk about when you bring those particular items up, that you got to say, or the Kohen, his blessing. So, well, should the Kohen got say the blessing with just 3, 5, 7 words? Should I throw some other words in there because I know these are some great, powerful words? that's when you're violating. So we got to know when you're violating, when it says don't add or diminish, or we have certain things to deal with today when it comes down to certain things that exist now as opposed to didn't exist at this time. Then you go to the judges that should be in those days. They got to base it off what is written and make it fit with what is written without trying to overextend it. So these are some of the things that they have. Those that follow rabbinic tradition say, okay, and um, the the filling roche, that you have on there and your head. They have 4 compartments with different sections of law, 2 from Exodus and 2 from Deuteronomy. Some people say, well, I know I might as well put a fifth compartment in there because I know that there's other things in the scriptures that is just as potent. Then according to rabbinic tradition, that'd be, a violation. All right, because you'd be extending it. But then also you got rabbinic tradition as opposed to uh, the written tradition in Tanakh. So there's certain things that they have in the rabbinic tradition that you don't find written in Tanakh, as far as eating dairy and meat together. That's um, a rabbinic ruling, not a Tanakh ruling itself. And they even include fowls in that ruling around the majority of circles. So these are some of the things that you consider going forward. Let me move on swiftly because I didn't get to the point I wanted. All right, 13th chapter of Deuteronomy. All this word shall command you that you shall observe to do. Thou shalt not add thereto, nor diminish from it. If there arise in the midst of thee a prophet or a dreamer, a dream, kolon kolomo, a master dreamer or a diviner, sometimes they translate it. And he give thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder come to pass, whereof he spoke unto thee, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or unto that dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God putteth you to prove, to know whether ye do love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. After the Lord your God shall ye walk, and him shall ye fear, and his commandments shall ye keep. And unto his voice shall you hearken, and him shall you serve, and unto him shall you cleave. All right, now I'm going to stop there to 6. What we have here is some things unique in Deuteronomy that we didn't have before, and and that is Moses instituting emotional thing to love God. All right, so as he institute the emotion to love God in this area here, then he creates an institution. Thou must fear God. Now we don't find anywhere in the scriptures that God told us and command us to fear Him. So those are some of the things that's novel. And we get into the book of Deuteronomy, and one of the things that when we look into the book of Deuteronomy itself, that why did Moses focus on those very emotions and in itself, and not only that, and use the term, the hear, in the sense of, the hear his voice. Now, um, so one of the things is that observing his voice. Now, and use that as some books might translate to obey, and obey him, and false hearing. And since when hearing is used for obeying, in a sense, so Moses tend to use terms a little bit different in the book of Deuteronomy that we didn't see before. But this is Moses' long sermon continuing throughout those last the last month or so within in the mount. And then it goes on to say, after that, after we get to that particular portion, it goes on to say, in the 6th verse, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken perversion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed thee out of the house of bondage, to draw thee aside out of the way which the Lord thy God commandeth thee to walk in. So shalt thou put away evil from the midst of thee. Now, a prophet or dream a dream, give you a sign, and God allows it to come to pass. So the Creator letting you know, it allowed it to come to pass, and to a degree. We have a lot of false prophets that we talk about in the prophecy of the book, that appeared and said he was prophets. And we also have dreams, and this is the conduit way that God mostly dealt with us, through dreams or the vision, make me either help us to sell or whatever the case is, and to communicate with us. Well, most of the prophets, when they have a vision, a kazon, that's a little different. And when they talk about a vision, but one of the things we look at is that the difference between a judge and a prophet. We could challenge the prophet. We can challenge the dreamer of dreams, but you cannot challenge a judge on issues. So that's why, when you either be judges righteously. When they talk about the judgment is God's. So in other words, and God judges the judges. So this is one of the things here that being a judge is not an easy job, and it's you're subject to get beat down quicker for being a corrupt judge, and by the Creator a lot quicker than the false judgments you might render. So as we go further down, and I'm just going to touch on this, and you can touch the last couple of moments. And if thy brother, the son of thy mother, or the son of thy daughter, or thy wife, or the wife of thy bosom, or the friend that is in thy own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, or the gods of thy people that are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the one end of the earth, even to the other end of the earth, thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thy eyes pity him, neither shall thou spare, neither shall thou conceal him, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thy hand shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hands of the people, all the people. So they don't call that snitching; they call that giving up information. And know what's interesting here? That it not only talk about your brother, you had the same father, you become actual brothers. But it said, but if you happen to have the same mother, brothers that have the same mother tend to be a little closer than brothers that has the same father but different mothers. So usually brothers that have the same mother, they're going to be closer. And then the ones that have different mothers, but they all have the same father. And what is unique here, it never brings in your mother and your father in this equation. And why not? One, you can't judge them. Two, them the first ones that taught you about a God. So if they taught you about a false God, then they taught you that's all you knew, because your mother is your first teacher, and normal, your father will be the second teacher. So if So normally, if your mother taught you about this particular way of worship, that's what you know. So it's not false to you because this is what I grew up under. Like a lot of people in the family in the Israelite community. I'm glad that the tide starting to change a little bit from generation to generation. But a lot of people grew up in the Hebrew Israelite community that they grew up from a Christian background, and some of them they had a lot of first generations that say, "I'm no longer following this and following that." So now, though they can't condemn their parents, to death because that's the first gods they knew was their parents, and their parents taught them about a God outside of themselves. So out of respect for the parents being your first God, and then they teaching you about something higher than themselves, that's worth itself giving that utmost respect. So you can never have any authority or judge over your parents, in that sense. But now, when your brother and or your wife, you already have a status. You already have an ideology. When they decide to change up things, then it's very problematic. So, and then they say, you're not supposed to hide and conceal. So now proving there's another thing, but you're not supposed to hide and conceal. And it's a death penalty. So this is a serious thing. I want to skip just a little bit into the dietary law. So much stuff going on about cities being destroyed and everything like that. And I'm not going to touch that. But it talked about dietary law. We had a dietary law in Leviticus, the 11th chapter. And this is the second part we have a dietary law that's mentioned here. And this dietary law, it mentioned about 10 clean animals, and then it mentioned about unclean stuff. And then this makes it a little different. And when it comes to sea creatures, it's very simple. Those with fins and scales, no matter what their bottom feed or no matter what they eat, no matter what diet, the fish might be have fins and scales, and you pull them up, and you got to, perhaps he might have some fish that not so clean that he just gobbled down. But that fish is still considered clean, that gobbled down the unclean fish in that sense. So so it just give you a simple thing. Fishes that have fins and scales. Now they got some fishes that lose their scales over a period of time. That's another issue of discussion. I'm not going to go into that, but the book makes it clear: fins and scales. It don't say how long it'll last, whatever the case is. If the species have that, it's okay. So as we go further, if we have it talk about birds, and it mentions in this particular portion the unclean birds and swarming things. So that's all it mentions in this particular portion. So it lists the unclean birds and the swarming things. So that would let you believe that the Torah used the most minor area. So it's more birds that's clean in the world than those that's unclean. I'm not an expert on fowl, so you have to take that up with your various teachers, rabbis or Kohanim or Morim, whoever. You have to take that up. I'm not an expert on all that. I keep it basic. Wills generally, accepted pretty much around. I keep it in that basic area because I'm not an expert on that. Because one of the things unique about this dietary law is that how did the Creator know that only one animal on the planet had cloven foot, split hoofs, and don't chew the cud, such as a swan? And he picked it out. You don't find any other animal that fit that. And a camel got a hoof, but it's split on top, but it's sealed together on the bottom. So so the camel, and the other chew the cud, it has like a hook toe, but it's split, but it's already webbed together at the bottom, and so that would make them unkosher. And they point them out there. So the That's another unique thing. So the Creator chooses unique things that would tend to most likely fool you, or be things of the controversy. And then I'm going to read this last one here. You should not eat anything that dieth of itself. Thou mayest give it to the stranger that was in thy gates, that he may eat it, or thou mayest sell it unto a foreigner, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not see the kid in his mother's milk. And so I'm just going to bring that out there, because only 3 times it's mentioned in the Torah, and they deduce from that. I spoke on it in the past about dairy and meat eating it together. And according to rabbinic circles, it'd be dairy first, rinse out. You could eat some meat behind it, but eat meat first. According to the main custom, wherever you might be, it could be anywhere from an hour where in Holland where they like to eat a lot of dairy, or 4 hours is a normal, majority rather, and then 6 hours in some areas. That's stringent. And some people even go in the next day. All right, so I'm on it. It talks about this year, the sabbatical year, about forgiving debts. And I'd like to speak on that for a minute, only briefly. There's so much stuff in here, so I'm going to just touch on it a minute and briefly about debts. And it's 6 years you sold the land, and the 7th year you relinquish all kind of debts. And one of the things about you relinquishing the debts is that you give a person a chance to start over, get out of the situation. That means even all loans in the sabbatical year. Now we got the Yovel, which, other things go on, which is more heavier than the sabbatical year. But every 7 year they have, you said, well, you owe me such and such. Well, 7 year come around, I got to let that go. So this is what it says here. Now, and to tell you not supposed to exactly, of his neighbor and his brother. That means, because it says, because the Lord's release has proclaimed of a foreigner. Now, say a guy that's a foreigner, he may as exacted because he necessarily might not go along with this law, and he uses a unique term for that, nokri. But whatsoever is thine is with thy, whatever of thine is with thy brother, thy hand shall release. Howbeit, there shall be no needy among you. So that means that this law is going to stay in effect as long as no one be able to borrow. One of the things also, I don't want to bring in this quickly within a few minutes, is that people might not want to. But the blessing behind is that we'll be the lenders and not the borrowers. So some well anyway, and those that follow Jewish practices, say the Jews in Europe, they became bankers. They loaned and became so good at loaning money and getting interest off of that in that area there, that it created such a problem in another country, in the country, that they say in Europe, different countries. In Israel, we was told to get our money back. So this might be a discussion whether do we apply this in Israel and not outside the land of Israel if we happen to be in another person's country. So these are some things you might want to discuss a little bit further. It's not a real simple answer in that area there, and that creates problems. And the thing is that when I'm not going to touch on it, read it, but in this particular portion, that when a Hebrew servant serves you for 6 years, you send them off well. You just don't say, okay, you're free and go. You set them up with appreciation of a real severance pay. So when they talk about severance pay, this is where it comes from in the Tanakh here. So this is very important for him to be set up with that particular thing, severance pay. And it goes on. I'm gonna skip on there about loaning, but I want to bring one more thing, a point. They got with the Hill on the first, for those that follow a rabbinic view. That Hillel the first, he had instituted what they call the pros pools, that people was worrying about, and he lived close to around the 2nd century CE. So he's wind up instituting what people said, well, I'm not going to make no money. I'm losing. And people was reluctant to loan because this is the 5th year. They're going to take the guy 3 years to pay it back. I'm not going to get my money, so I'm not going to loan them. And you're supposed to loan them sufficient for their need. So he come up with a thing where to circumvent this. Now that's a discussion that you can have where they sell the debt to the court before the time get there. So now you're no longer owing this individual, you owe the court, and the court will give the individual the money, and you might reciprocate the court for handling the business. So I have issues with those particular areas there, but that's what you came up with. So you could discuss it amongst yourself. But I'll just point that out because I'm aware of certain areas in the rabbinic world where they have Hillel come up with a pro booze in that sense. So I wanted to just make sure I bring that to the forefront. The last thing I want to talk about real quick in a couple of minutes, which won't do much justice to it, is the Shalosh Regalim. And when we talk about the Shalosh Regalim in the area there, we find out the first thing I want to bring out about Passover, and that's the only one I'm going to focus on in a couple of minutes. In 16th chapter, it said, "You shall observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto the Lord. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt by night, and thou shalt sacrifice the Passover offering unto the Lord thy God of the flocks and of the herd in the place which the Lord shall choose to cause his name to dwell there." Now I want to stop there just a moment, that one verse, because it uses the term flocks and herd, and when we get into that particular portion there, we know according to different parts of Exodus that it's supposed to be only lamb, sheep, or goat. That's all we're supposed to have on Passover. So why Moses now set up the herd, which is bullocks, beef? Why say that now when we know automatically that it's supposed to be those particular items there? You might want to discuss that a little bit further, but one view I would share as you go ahead and discuss it further is that when you get into the land of Israel, and you had this particular, uh, have those particular uh, uh, gatherings 3 times in a year, you're gonna have a lot of people. And a yearling lamb or goat is very small, very small. You got to be less than a year old, so it's very small, underdeveloped, and you got to eat it, within that night. So when we talk about, say the zone or bakar, which is actually the flock or the goat, then that's something novel that Moses saying you're going to be allowed to do that back there, eat up the flock and the goat there. So that's very, very novel in that sense. So, and the last couple things I want to bring out on this here is when they talk about in reference to unleavened bread. So that's one thing you might want to discuss: the flocks and the herds. Because bulls, I can have a calf for the first year, and that's what Moses say in here. That's something most people don't think about for Passover. I'm gonna give me some beef this year, and Moses saying this is okay when you get into the land. So when we get to the last part of unleavened bread, it talks about 6 days in one spot and 7 days in another. Rabbinically, some people would use the 6-day part as in the 8th verse as a reference to you only have to eat that one day, the first day, and then you can't eat anything with leavening for the rest 6 days. But you only have to eat 11 months to that first day. Well, I don't hold to that view because I come up from a different bracket, but I'm just sharing those different viewpoints that's out there. You can always discuss them with your people, and those, because I know a lot of Israelites, have a rabbinic background. So I just wanted to, share those different things that they bring out and where they get it from in this particular area here. Also, but we know the new grain you're only going to eat for 6 days because you have to offer it up. So that's the one we mostly taught, that the new grain, when you can't eat it till after tomorrow, after the holy day, which is the Passover, then which would be the 16th of the month of Aviv, then you can eat it. Now, also we get into the thing about Shavuot, count 7 weeks to Shavuot. When we count 7 weeks of Shavuot, we don't have a date for Shavuot. We don't know. We just know 7 weeks. So when you put the sickle to the corn, when is that? When do you put the sickle to the corn? That's the question. But here we get an idea in Leviticus that on the morrow, when we start to count. So pretty much for most of the times falls on the 6th of Sivan. But it tell you in Leviticus its actual date. Also, one more thing I want to share before I close out is that when you get to Sukkot, it doesn't give you a date for Sukkot in this particular portion. But yet, we know when you talk about the grain, the wine, and all that stuff, we got that in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, the 15th of the 7th month, when you bring those things in. And we read about it, the different things in the portion of Numbers thing falling on the Pentecost. So these are some of the things when you see the differences here and look at it. I like people to pay close attention to it because people quick to say no date for Shavuot, but then here we don't have a date here for Sukkot. But it describes it, what we do on Sukkot that we don't do on Shavuot, and we have a date for it in the book of Leviticus, 23rd chapter. So I hope you got something out of what I said. I know I went through and chopped up a lot of stuff, but like I said earlier, everybody go over it, and any mistakes been my own, and everybody have, I'm gonna say Shalom Aleichem and an early Shabbat Shalom.
Hallelujah. Torah about Nasik. Thank you for your dedication, and I pray that the Most High God continue to bless you. Thank you all. Everyone have a good Shabbat sleep, and may the Most High God bless us all to return next week. Shalom, shalom. Hallelujah.
Let's get knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The CHOKMAH here to push it through